The most iconic symbol of French pastry was actually invented in Austria. While we associate it with the streets of Paris, the recipe was a foreign import, brought to the city through a specific commercial campaign that rebranded an Austrian staple as a French original. If you look through French culinary records or bakery catalogs prior to the 1850s, the croissant is missing. It simply did not exist in the national diet. The pastry's French identity was manufactured in the mid-19th century, filling a gap in the historical record that historians are only recently beginning to map. Popular legends attempt to explain the pastry through warfare. One story claims it was created in 1683 to mark the Austrian victory over the Ottoman Empire at the Siege of Vienna. In this version, Viennese bakers modeled the dough after the crescent moon on the Ottoman flag, allowing the city's defenders to eat the symbol of their enemy. A second myth credits Marie Antoinette with bringing the pastry to the French court in the 1770s to remind her of her childhood in Vienna. There is no documented evidence for either story. To find the actual origin, we have to look past these royal legends and toward the commercial expansion of 19th century Paris. The true ancestor of the croissant is the Austrian Kipferl. It dates back to at least the 13th century, but it wasn't a flaky pastry. It was a dense, heavy roll made from yeasted dough. This heavy roll arrived in Paris in 1838, when an Austrian entrepreneur named Auguste Zang opened the Boulangerie Viennoise. Zang used aggressive newspaper advertising and a patented steam oven that gave his pastries a lustrous golden sheen. His shop became a sensation almost overnight. Local bakers quickly copied Zang's product. They took his crescent-shaped rolls and renamed them croissants, which is simply the French word for crescent. By the time Zang closed his shop in 1840, the Austrian Kipferl had been successfully planted in French daily life, providing the blueprint for a massive technical shift. Even with its new name, the mid-19th century croissant was still a dense bread roll. It lacked the light, layered texture we recognize today. The breakthrough occurred in 1915. A French baker named Sylvain Claudius Goy recorded a recipe that abandoned the bread-style dough for something much more complex: puff pastry. Goy utilized a technique called lamination. He took a block of cold butter and folded it into a sheet of yeast dough, rolling it out and folding it again and again. This process creates hundreds of microscopic layers, alternating bands of solid fat and raw dough. In the oven, water inside those butter layers turns to steam. That expanding vapor pushes the dough layers apart to lift the entire pastry. The heat sets the dough in this expanded state, creating a rigid honeycomb of thin, brittle layers that shatter when touched. Goy didn't invent the shape, but his use of lamination took a basic, dense roll and physically restructured it into the specialized pastry that would define French baking. By 1920, the French government officially formalized the croissant as a recognized national product. This was the final step in a total cultural adoption. A foreign invention had been brought across the border, physically transformed, and then completely absorbed by the host country's identity. This pattern repeats across French history, with Belgian fries and English chocolate rolls being similarly integrated into the national brand. That brand has now scaled into a $6 billion global industry, producing everything from American breakfast sandwiches to Asian matcha spirals. But the French version achieved global dominance because of the specific sensory profile Goy and his peers engineered, the precise physical resistance of a crust that is designed to shatter. The gap between the 13th century Austrian Kipferl and the modern croissant is vast. One is a dense, simple bread. The other is a calculated exercise in lamination. The shape traveled from Vienna to Paris, but the physical structure stayed behind. Cultural identity is built by those who apply the artistry and technical rigor required to perfect a concept. France owns the croissant because its bakers spent a century refining the mathematics of the dough. The pastry belongs to them through the mastery of its execution.